back to English from A to Z. English in real life. Okay, let's just get right into it. I want you to think about something you've probably been told a million times. The contractions are, well, they're kind of lazy, right? That they're just for informal English, something you should avoid if you want to sound smart. But what if I told you that's completely backward? What if not using them is actually the thing that makes you sound unnatural? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the secret rules that even native speakers use without even knowing it.
So let's just put the big question right out there. Is saying don't instead of do not, or it's instead of it is that really just lazy? Is it a bad habit you need to break? This is probably one of the biggest myths that English learners have to deal with, and it causes so much confusion.
The answer, a huge, resounding no. Seriously, it's not even a question. Contractions aren't just normal, they are absolutely essential. They're the engine of spoken English. Avoiding them is what can actually make you sound a little stiff, maybe even a bit robotic. The real secret isn't if you should use them, but how. The rules are a little more complex than you think, and that's exactly what we're going to break down.
All right, so let's start with the basics, but we're going to add a twist. We're not just going to look at how these things are spelled. Nope. We're going to focus on how they actually sound when people are talking at a normal, everyday speed. Because, this is where the magic really happens. Okay, so take I am. Super simple. The contraction is I'm. But in really fast, natural speech, that sound often gets squished down even more. It can sound like Yeah, really. So a sentence like I'm not sure can easily come out sounding like I'm not sure. It's one of those things that happens all the time in real life, but you almost never see it in a textbook.
And you are is even cooler. The contraction is your, right? But it actually has two main pronunciations. Sometimes, it sounds exactly like the word your, as in your book. But way more often, especially when we're just talking casually, it gets reduced to your. You'll hear this constantly. You're kidding me, or you're doing an awesome job.
Now, for he is and she is, the most important thing to remember is the sound at the very end. The word is has a Z sound, right? So the contractions do too. It's he's and she's with that little buzz. It's is a bit of a special case. That T sound and the S sound, they just melt together. It's not it's. It's one smooth sound. It's.
Okay, so we've got those basics down. Now we get to dig into the really good stuff. We're talking about the little secrets, the things native speakers just do. The stuff that can make English sound so incredibly fast and tricky to understand. And let me tell you, this next one, this is a big one. This is one of those aha moments. If you can get this, it's going to clear up so much confusion, not just with listening, but with spelling too. So here it is. Get ready. The words there, and there. In spoken English, they all sound exactly the same. 100% identical. I'll say that again. There is absolutely no difference in how we say them. The only way you can tell which one a person is using is from the context of the sentence. That's it.
So now that we know that, let's see where else we can find these contractions. Because they're not just for pronouns like I or he or she. Oh no. They pop up all over the place, like with regular nouns and even question words. Getting comfortable with this is going to make you sound so much more natural.
That's right. You can stick is onto almost any noun. So the car is fast becomes the car's fast. My friend is here becomes my friend's here. Now you might be thinking, hold on a second. Doesn't apostrophe S mean something belongs to someone? And yeah, it can. But just like we saw before, it's all about context. When you hear the cat's big, you know we're not talking about something the cat owns. It just makes sense.
And this pattern is everywhere with question words. In spoken English, we almost never say the full what is. It's always what's. We don't say where is. It's where's. It's just a simple little tweak that makes your English flow so much better. What's your name? Where's the restaurant? See? It just sounds right.
But wait, there's more. It's not just is. We do the exact same thing with are. Now, you might not see this written down very often, but you will hear it constantly. Native speakers are always saying things like, what are you doing? Or where are my keys? It's just fast, it's efficient, and it is 100% natural.
Okay, so we've spent all this time talking about how contractions are awesome and you should use them all the time. But knowing when not to use them is just as important. In fact, there is one situation where using a contraction is a complete no-go. And honestly, this might be the single most important rule we talk about today.
So why would you ever hear someone say the full I am or he is? Well, there are a couple of reasons. The first one is for emphasis. You know, when you really want to make a point, you separate the words. I am telling you the truth. It adds power. The other reason is just, well, random variation. Sometimes people just don't contract. It changes up the rhythm of speech.
But beyond just wanting to emphasize something or just personal preference, there is one unbreakable, non-negotiable, never ever do this rule. One time where a contraction isn't just a bad idea, it's just flat out wrong. Any ideas what that might be?
Here it is. This is the big one. You can't use a contraction if the verb, the is, the am, the are, is the very last word in the sentence of the phrase. That verb has to have another word following it for the contraction to be possible. This is the golden rule.
Let's look at an example, and you'll see it instantly. If someone asks you, who is ready, the only correct answer is, I am. You can never, ever, ever respond by saying, I'm. It sounds so wrong to a native speaker. Why? Because that verb, am, is at the end of the sentence. It has nowhere to go, so it can't be contracted.
And here's one more example, just to really let it sink in. You might say something like, she's always on time. That's just the kind of person she is. You would never, ever end that sentence with the kind of person she's. It just completely breaks that unbreakable rule.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that contractions aren't lazy or informal. They are the absolute bedrock of spoken English. They're what make it flow. And now that you know the hidden rules, from the tiny little sound changes to that one unbreakable law, what do you think you're going to notice? Next time you're watching a movie or talking to a friend, just listen. I promise you'll start to hear the real rhythm of English in a whole new way.
You know how native English speakers are always squishing words together? Do not becomes don't, I am turns into I'm. It feels like it's just part of the language's DNA. But what if I told you there's one specific type of past tense that native speakers, and I mean never, contract? It's like an invisible fence they just don't cross. So let's dive into this unspoken rule that's going to totally change how you hear and speak English. And you know what? It's completely true. I mean, just listen to any movie, any song, any casual conversation. Contractions are absolutely everywhere. They're a huge part of sounding natural and fluent. Using them the right way makes your speech just flow, you know? It sounds smoother, more connected. So, in the middle of all this word shrinking, there is one particular past tense phrase that is completely off limits. It's a rule that's so deep, native speakers don't even think about it, they just do it. But for learners, it can be a major, major trip up. You ready to find out what it is? All right, section 1, the unspoken contraction rule. Let's not waste any time. Let's pull back the curtain on this mystery. Okay, so here it is. The big secret is you cannot ever contract a positive statement in the simple past tense. So you can say he's here for he is here, no problem. But you can never ever use he's to mean he was here. It just sounds wrong. So why is that? Let's get into it. So now for section 2, present versus past confusion. And trust me, this isn't just some random quirky English rule. There's a really good practical reason we avoid these contractions. It all boils down to not getting confused. Seriously, just think about it for a second. If you heard someone say, we're at the park, how on earth would you know if they meant they are at the park right now or if they were at the park yesterday? See? That's the whole problem right there. And this is where it all clicks. This table just lays it out so clearly. The contraction for we are and we were would sound exactly the same. We're. Same thing for you are and you were. Both would be your. To keep the meaning crystal clear, English just says, nope, not allowed, and forbids the past tense version completely. So think of this as your official do not contract list. These phrases, when you're saying something positive, always have to be spoken in their full two-word form. No shortcuts, no exceptions. I was, you were, he was, always. Simple enough, right? Well, almost. Okay, on to section 3, the all-important exception. Because just when you think you've finally got a rule nailed down, English loves to throw in a little twist. But don't worry, this one actually makes a lot of sense. That's right. While the positive form is a total no-go, you absolutely can, and to sound natural, you really should contract the negative. Was not and were not are totally fair game. This is where you get to shrink your words and sound perfectly native. And here's why this works so perfectly. Unlike those tricky positive forms, the negative contractions wasn't and weren't are totally unique. There's no present tense version that sounds anything like them, so there is zero chance of confusion. You can say, I wasn't there, or they weren't ready, and it is 100% clear. Now for section 4, let's zoom in on the details for didn't. This one is probably the most common past tense negative contraction of all, and honestly, it's going to be your best friend because it's so incredibly consistent. You know, the beautiful thing about did not is just how simple it is. For past tense negatives, did is the only helper verb you need. It doesn't matter if it's I, you, he, she, they, who cares? They all become didn't. I did not go just becomes I didn't go. Easy. Okay, you want a little secret to take your pronunciation to the next level. Here it is. Instead of saying didn't with a really sharp t sound at the end, a lot of native speakers kind of merge the D and N sounds. Think about the word garden. See how that D-N sound in the middle happens? The air kind of stops in your throat and then comes out your nose. That's it. Try it with me. Didn't. It's a tiny change, but wow, it makes a huge difference. All right, you've learned the rule, the reason behind the rule, the big exception, and even a pro pronunciation tip. So, I think it's time to put all that amazing new knowledge to the test. Just a few quick questions to make sure it all sticks. Okay, question number 1. Take a look. Which one of these is a legit way to contract a positive past tense verb? Is it A, I's, B, what's, or C, were? Think back to that core rule we talked about. And the answer is none of them. Yep, it was a bit of a trick question. You can't contract any of these when you're talking about the past. Sure, what's can mean what is, but it can never mean what was. That's our core rule in action. Great job if you saw that coming. Let's try another one. This time, we're on the hunt for the sentence that is grammatically wrong for a past situation. Read them carefully. Is it A, B, or C? And the answer is C. The cats are not here is a perfectly good sentence for right now in the present, but it just doesn't work for the past. To talk about the past, you'd have to say the cats weren't here. Sentences A and B, on the other hand, are both perfect. Okay, last one. And this one's a little bit of a brain teaser. We already know for sure that C is wrong, right? You can't use he's to mean he was. But what about B? It ends with the contraction didn't. Is that even allowed? Surprise! While C is definitely wrong, sentence B is perfectly okay. Now, this might seem like it breaks some other rule you've heard about, not ending sentences with a contraction. But there's a very specific reason it's allowed right here. So here's the deal. In a contraction like didn't or wasn't, that little ent on the end is basically the word not in disguise. So even though it's all smushed together, grammatically it still counts as a word that comes after the verb, which makes it totally fine to end a sentence with. This is a perfect example. No, you weren't. Sounds completely natural, doesn't it? That's because it is. It's a totally correct response. Same thing goes for no, I wasn't, or no, he didn't. All good. And there you go. The secret rule of past tense contractions is officially yours. You now know what not to do, contract the positive was and were, and what you absolutely should be doing, using wasn't, weren't, and didn't all the time. So you've pretty much mastered the past. But English is always moving forward, which leads to the real question. Are you ready for the future? Think of us as linguistic detectives. We're going to solve a puzzle, a secret code that's hiding in plain sight in everyday spoken English. So let's just jump right in and get to the mystery. So here it is, our big mystery. What on earth do a bunch of cows, a car part, a little mountain, and the sound a wolf makes have to do with talking about the future in English? I can pretty much guarantee the answer is not what you're thinking. And figuring it out is the secret to making your English sound unbelievably natural. So stick with me, because we are about to crack this code wide open. All right, so to solve this whole thing, we need to know the rules of the game first. You know, future contractions. They can seem a little tricky, but honestly, they're one of the most common everyday parts of spoken English. And first, let's just bust a couple of myths right now. Native speakers, we use these contractions all the time, and they're not some kind of informal slang, not at all. In speech, this is just the standard way of talking. And you know what the best part is? The rules are actually super simple and really predictable. Seriously, getting this down is one of the fastest shortcuts to sounding more fluent. Okay, let's start digging for clues. We'll start with the most common type of contraction out there, the ones we use with pronouns. This is where we're going to find the first big pieces of evidence to solve our puzzle. So the basic formula is about as straightforward as it gets. You just take a pronoun, like I, you, or she, and you add the word will, and you just kind of smash them together. You get that ul sound at the end. So I will becomes all. You will becomes you'll. They will becomes they'll. Simple, right? But the real magic happens in how they sound. And check this out. This is our first major breakthrough. When you say he will all contracted, it becomes he'll, which sounds, well, it sounds exactly like the word hill. And we will becomes will, which is pronounced precisely like will. Just like that, two of our mystery words are solved. They're just sound-alikes for some of the most basic contractions. How cool is that? All right, we're on a roll, but now our investigation takes a little turn. Things get a bit more interesting when we start talking about negatives. And there's a really subtle but super important detail here that separates natural speakers from, well, everyone else. So let's do a quick gut check. Take a look at these two sentences. He'll not go and he won't go. Which one of those just feels wrong for a normal everyday conversation? Go on, pick one. Okay, got your answer? Well, it was a trick question. See, technically, from a pure grammar standpoint, they're both correct. But we're not talking about what's technically correct for a textbook. We're talking about sounding fluent and modern, and one of these is pretty much never used in normal speech. And this really breaks it down. Saying he'll not go is super formal, kind of old-fashioned, and you'll almost never hear it. It just sounds a little stiff, maybe even a bit dramatic, like something from a Shakespeare play. He won't go, on the other hand, is the clear winner. It's natural, it's common, it's what you're going to hear and what you should be using day to day. So here's the bottom line. For future negatives, won't is your absolute best friend. We are in the home stretch, folks. We've tackled pronouns, we've figured out negatives, and now it is time to find the last two pieces of our puzzle. And this means we've got to move beyond just pronouns and see where else these contractions pop up. That's right, this whole contraction thing isn't just about he and she. You can do the exact same thing with nouns. So take a really simple sentence like, the cat will run. In natural fast speech, we just don't say all those words separately. Instead, it all just flows together and becomes the cat'll run. Can you hear that sound? Cattle. The noun cat just melts right into that old sound. It's so much smoother, way more efficient, and it is incredibly common. And boom, there is our third mystery word. The sound of cattle is exactly the same as the word cattle. Another piece of the puzzle just clicks right into place. This is such a great example of how the sounds of English can create these fun little overlaps. So what about our last word, how? Well, you can probably guess where this is going. The pattern continues. Contractions aren't just for statements. They are absolutely essential for asking questions with words like what, where, and, yep, how. So let's take the question, how will you know? When you say that naturally, it just morphs into, how'll you know? Listen to that again. Hear how and will just blend into one seamless sound, how. It makes the question faster, more fluid, just more natural. And there it is, the final reveal. How sounds absolutely identical to how. Our linguistic puzzle is officially solved. Hill, wheel, cattle, and howl, they aren't random words at all. They're phonetic twins to some of the most common future contractions we use every single day. So now that we've cracked the code, what do we do with this information? Well, let's pack it all up. Don't think of this as a list of grammar rules. Think of it as a practical toolkit you can start using right away to make your English sound sharper and way more authentic. So here's the whole thing in a nutshell. First, mystery solved. Cattle, wheel, hill, and howl are all perfect sound-alikes for common contractions. Next, remember that pronoun contractions like hill and will are non-negotiable. They're essential. Also, don't be shy about contracting with nouns and question words. You know, the cattle, what'll, that's how people really talk. And finally, that golden rule for negatives. Always, always choose won't if you want to sound natural. You know, we've cracked the code for the future tense, but this is really just the tip of the iceberg. These same patterns, these same kinds of rhythms and sounds, they show up in other tenses too. So the real question is, now that your ears are tuned to listen for these connections, what other secret codes are you going to discover in spoken English? Thanks so much for digging into this with me.